Well, hello, welcome to my house, and today is stovetop roasting day in a stovetop popcorn popper. And let me just get going on the roasting first because I need to preheat this. I haven't done that yet. So the first thing that's important is to weigh out your coffee and always use a consistent batch. So I'm roasting 1 pound of Burundi Gahahe. And now that I have that weighed out, and by the way, this cookie tray is going to be my cooling device. I need to start heating up my popper. I'm using the largest burner that I have to distribute the heat. These are the VKP, I believe. This one says Victoria on it. It's just simply an older logo, basically. It's the same unit. And these are super. I love these because they're heavy. They have a conductive metal bottom, so it means you can actually use them on different types of stovetops. For example, induction burners, and flat electric, glass top electric, standard electric, and in this case, I have gas. So, and they're really cool. They have a little magnetic unit there to hold the top open. Unit. This is going to be a really good video. I don't have my language. This one is a little bit, actually, this is an older version. This has the non-flexible agitator, and the new one has an improvement. So what you get if you get one from us is an improved version. Let me find something else that's very important here, is some form of a thermometer. And I like these no contact laser thermometers. You can get these pretty cheap. They used to be really expensive, and what it allows me to do is to say, we're 165 degrees right now on the bottom of this. And it's really important to preheat and also to know the contact temperature on the bottom when you first put your coffee in. This is a conduction type of roasting, and the easiest thing to do here is to scorch the coffee. Scorching happens a lot with conduction roasting, and when you have like just hot surfaces, obviously, it's much less of an issue with air roasters and different types of drum roasters that keep coffee in motion constantly. And here it's really up to you and your skill and your experience once you do some roast to figure out how to do this without scorching the coffee. Scorched roasts taste bad. They're typically, the flavors are campfire-y flavors that you'd expect. Also kind of skunky roast flavors, kind of odd burnt, sometimes creosole, tarry roast flavors like intense bitterness. So you don't probably want any of those. So what we're going to do is get up to, we're at 256. I'm gonna go a little high here. I'm gonna go to 450. 400 or 450 is great. If you want to be safe with a coffee, or you have a lower altitude coffee like a Brazil, you might want to start at 350. Do a very gentle warm up. But this Burundi is extremely high grown, dense, wet processed coffee. I'm going to go for 450, and then a moderate flame to increase as I go through time. And I will need my timer, which I need to find. So just a second, we're just warming up here. I'll fast forward. And of course, I'm going to have this big drop in temperature as soon as I add my coffee. Okay, so can't do this backwards. Let's start the timer, and voila, add our coffee. Now for me, stovetop roasting is continuous agitation and shaking. A little bit of shaking every so often. And so let's just see how that is going right off the bat. And hopefully you can see that quite well on camera 2, meaning old phone number 2. this is why I like the shaking. Get things, if the flat side is down on a beam, shake it around. And we can be pretty moderate here, but you are basically tethered to this for the duration of the roast. And I think that's probably a good thing, because a lot of people who use really automated roasters sometimes walk away, and you should never, ever do that in roasting coffee. So we're at 1 minute. I'm on a very conservative flame. I'm just going to go up a bit. So one of the things that's really important about conduction roasting, and this is not to undercut this because it has so many advantages. The advantages, let's be positive. The advantages are low cost. This is like 50 bucks. It's really good quality too, by the way, compared to what the aluminum ones that used to be available, and that's all we had. And the weight of this is really good. It keeps it in place. I mean, I can pretty much stir it without a hand on it. Those old aluminum ones were so thin, the bottom is so thin for the conduction of the coffee, so it's going to have hot spots. And you couldn't obviously use those with an induction burner, which is a great even way to heat anything. And it would move around all the time, so you're constantly having to keep another hand on it, which didn't feel great. And sometimes I have an oven mitt on. I don't really feel like I need it with this one. Let's take a look. We should just be seeing really not much happening, and that's good because we're just at 2 minutes. Stovetop roasting should be longer, slower, and you just need to be really patient. This is not a 5-minute, 7-minute roast process. It would be ideal if we're looking at 12 minutes. Let's give some ranges, like 11 to 15 would be nice for a good city to city plus roast here. And that's because we want the early part of the roast to really conduct heat evenly to the coffee. I'm getting a few smells here, a few roast smells. And we're just probably losing a little bit of water there in the coffee, the moisture content. And I think I'm going to have to increase heat slightly because I'm going to be peaking so much in this roast to try to show you what's going on. And frankly, I know for a fact that my burner needs, the jets need cleaning. It's been running real low in terms of overall heat. So rewinding a little there, conduction roasting is, let's just say it straight out, not the best form of roasting. So you need to be very careful not to scorch coffee, and that means paying attention to your early roast development and seeing even yellowing and even browning colors in your coffee. An air roaster, for example, takes care of that for you unless you overload the roaster. Here the great advantage is you have a low initial cost. You buy a pound of coffee, you throw it in there, and voila, you can roast a full pound of coffee. So the batch capacity is what really attracts a lot of people to this. The other thing is that you actually have no upper limit on how dark you can roast. So some people that only like darker roasts well into second crack will like stovetop roasting. The disadvantage of that, especially with a full pound of coffee, a larger volume, smoke, lots of smoke. So some of those people probably get kicked out of the kitchen and have to do this outside. Stovetop roasting is great because you've got your lighting here. This happens to be very yellow lighting, unfortunately. And I've got my my fan, which I can turn on, which I will turn on when we get a little more into the roast. So we're already at 5 minutes, and you can see we have some very good yellowing, light browning going on. It's looking quite good. A lot of moisture coming off the coffee at this point. So when you see this initial you know, what looks like smoke initially. That's simply moisture, and you can feel it. It's humid. So you're in the phase where you're just going for moisture loss. You may know this, but first crack in coffee is the internal locked bonded moisture reaches boiling, and there's that moisture expansion, that rapid heat loss leads to this exothermic reaction, a heat loss reaction, and the coffee physically cracks as, to some degree, formations of gases, but also moisture vapor escapes the coffee. And it's the same thing that happens with popcorn, but obviously coffee does not pop like popcorn. It doesn't have that physical reaction, but that's actually what happens when your popcorn pops, is you have reached the boiling point of the bonded moisture within that. So we are doing pretty good. We are going to get some early first crack. It's going to be spread over a long time. That's what we want. And I'm going ahead, now that I've got that heat invested into that coffee, and I'm turning down my heat. And with our drum roast, for example, our ProBat 25-pound batch drum roaster, that's our approach. Is we're always sort of ramping up heat, trying to get the heat into the coffee evenly. And as we approach first crack, we're backing off, trying to get a very nice, extended, long, controlled first crack. You know, it occurs to me, I better roast this coffee to second crack in order to fully demonstrate that, because so many people that roast with stovetop want to get to second crack. So this is great, 7 minutes, 45 seconds. We started some light first crack, about 7. Very subtle. You hear the, I don't want to lose too much moisture there, but I want you to see it. You hear how slow and controlled it is. And that's fantastic. Now you don't want to overreact in turning down your heat during or as first crack approaches, because it is a heat losing reaction, and that can kind of stall the roast. But generally, I think in most roast processes, people would agree that very clearly delineated first and second crack, those two reactions that are happening that are audible, and the reactions that they signify, it's very good if they're long separated and distinct from each other. If you have super fast roasting, you will tend to have those reactions blur together. And in a lot of times you have multiple things occurring. In fact, a lot of roast reactions are compounds that are formed during roasting from the original constituents, compounds of the green coffee. And then those are then part of a secondary reaction, and at the end, those midterm compounds aren't even present in the final coffee. As you know, there's like 1,200, right? Last time I counted, 1,400, I don't know, compounds in coffee, so don't expect me to know much about particular ones. This is fantastic roast. I'm very excited about how this is going. We've been in first crack for over 2 minutes. Very nice and gradual. Now, how do I know this is first crack? Listen to it. It really is a popping like popcorn. It's a real cracking. It sounds like cracking. Second crack is a snapping kind of sound. It's a shallow sort of sound. And it's nice too, because see, with the stovetop, you can hear this so much better than, roaster where the coffee is contained, behind in a drum in an enclosed unit with a motor whirring, and especially with air roasting. So we're going to be approaching second crack. I haven't actually used my thermometer. I can, but I don't think it's that useful, honestly. It says 383 Fahrenheit, which should be on the low side as far as I'm concerned. And you know, like I said, this is a 379. That one. I would rather just pay attention to the coffee, the smells, the sound. This is kind of a very visceral, you know, process that involves you as a human and not a machine process of roasting. So not usually the process that people who love to log things on their computer and sit somewhere and, you know, control their roast. This isn't usually the process for them. But, you know, a lot of people who love kitchen craft and cooks and stuff who want to try roasting coffee, this is fantastic. And it really is fun and involved, and you get to make decisions along the way, and sometimes those are good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes you go too far, you roast too dark, sometimes you roast too light, and that's how you learn. Can you see it? Pretty good. It's really nice. I'm very excited. And we're getting a little second crack now. I just heard that. And I don't even want to adjust my burner. I mean, I don't know if you can see that. It's very low. But this VKP is really good because the metals are holding the heat very well. So now I can tell that the smoke is getting more pungent. And we definitely the smoke feels dry. It doesn't have that humidity of before first crack. And during first crack, the moisture loss. I think I'm gonna have to, so I want to get this to second crack to really show you the results. We're definitely on the cusp of some second crack. And again, we want to know that the roast is progressing. We're not stalling, that it's very even. You know what's great is if I did, well, I guess I can do it. I do this with the other roast processes. Just trying to get a sample out. And to be able to really look at a sample. Is that working? And that is very nice. I can tell by the bean expansion we're not fully in second crack. Let me go ahead and push it a little higher. Sometimes too, you know, saying, oh, I did a really good roast, it was 15 minutes exactly, and oh, the next time I roasted 15 minutes exactly, so I should get the same roast. Or, you know, these things don't really work in coffee. You really can develop a feel for how a roast progresses and like what you're hearing and seeing and the smells, just using all of your senses, and that really is a guide, and that will tell you much more than, and you know, hitting a particular time mark, having first crack start exactly at this time. That some of those sort of sensual things are actually very valid in this form of roasting. Now, I can hear we are getting some second crack. Let's try to listen a second. It's a shallower sound. Now I want to tell you something, if you like dark roast, do not roast your coffee. So 15 minutes basically, we're done. Do not roast your coffee until it's dark and oily. If you buy coffee, now we've got a lot of chaff in here. you've got a lot of coffee to cool. But this is just lightly touched second crack. Those like dark oily beans that you buy, that's because it's old. If your coffee comes out oily from your roaster, you have really, really, really roasted dark, and you've started to really damage the coffee. You should not see oils immediately. They will come out and emerge over the next even 48 hours or 24 hours. Tomorrow morning, this will have some light oils on it. Not much, because it's a pretty, we're still in full city range. We're definitely not in French range. Now it's hard to cool a lot of coffee like this. So what I tend to do is use a pan. I actually wish I had one of my fans here. You can use a colander and put a fan under it. And I think I'm going to go do that because I don't think this is good enough. Honestly, I rarely roast a full pan, and it works out wonderfully. Now you can see a couple spots of oils in there. So I'm a hypocrite, but this looks very good. I don't see much scorching. I do see a couple scorched beans. They happen to be the oily ones too. So yeah, that's stovetop roasting. It's so easy and it's really fun. It's inexpensive. You can roast a large amount. And I don't think it's my favorite roast process for the taste of the coffee, but for example, that result that I just had is going to be quite good. This is going to be nice. It's the thing with stovetop roasting and oven roasting too, is you can make really bad decisions and get really bad coffee. You can really scorch it. You can over and under roast it. You can bake it. But what's neat about that is that you're making more decisions when you're doing this, and your result may vary more, but you have control of that. You can get a bad result and be like, oh, next time I'm not going to do this or that, and you can get a really good result. So like cooking, it's exciting because it's up to you. I mean, just because you steam some broccoli doesn't mean that it's going to be good. I mean, you need a good ingredient, and you need a good, you need a good process, and you need to make some bad broccoli before you start to learn how to do it well. And then you make some magic broccoli sometime that's just amazing and sweet and everything lined up, and you try to do that every time. It doesn't always happen, but the results, good or bad, are up to you, and that's like stovetop roasting. So I'll add a few extra photos in of some things during this, and I'm going to get this cooled in a fan with a colander. So, all right, thanks.